Let me ask you something. A lot just happened in football this weekend, but did you catch it all? I've spent the last 7 hours recapping the week, and these are the players you need to add immediately. Starting with the Panthers running back Raheem Blackshear. Yes, Raheem Blackshear, because Chuba Hubbard ended up injuring his ankle in the fourth quarter of the last game and did not return. And if he misses time, it means more work for Blackshear. Now, here's what you need to know. Blackshear's a rookie, and he's an elite pass catcher. In college, he had 3 seasons of 25-plus receptions, which it's rare to have just one of those for a running back, and he earned 25% of his team's targets, which for a running back is the highest I've ever seen. It's top 10 of all time in college football history. He would slide in as the main pass catching back if Hubbard was to miss, and this team's going to be trailing a lot, so that's valuable. But what if Hubbard doesn't miss time? Well, let's discuss. In this scenario, you need to add Chuba because before injury last week, he ended up playing 61% of the snaps. When you look at the overall box score, it's going to look like Foreman was the lead back. He was not. 61% of the snaps went to Hubbard before injury. But that's not all, because Chuba also played 85% of the passing down snaps, which again, this team is going to be trailing moving forward. That is valuable. So acquire Hubbard and then this veteran wide receiver. You want to add Van Jefferson because in a press conference this past week, you saw Sean McVay say that after the bye week, he is going to be getting back Van Jefferson, and this is massive news because the Rams desperately need him. And what they need is his ability to stretch the field and be a vertical threat. Because so far this season, Allen Robinson and Ben Skowronek, the number 2 and 3 receivers on the year, have only 3 deep catches. And Skowronek ranks 78th in wide receiver efficiency. He's not adding much. This is where Van Jefferson will be filling in. And Jefferson alone last year had 17 deep targets, 1 per game on this season, and he ended up finishing 6th in fantasy points versus man coverage. The translation here is expect big plays sooner rather than later for Jefferson. Grab him and this next player. That would be his teammate Kyren Williams, who according to Adam Schefter was going to play a lot week 1 if an injury did not happen. And he might have even played ahead of Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. And now here's why this matters. It appears that Cam Akers is going to be traded, and if he doesn't trade, not likely to be involved much on this team because he doesn't want to be there. Maybe now he'll be traded to the Jets after the injury to Breece Hall. And Kyren Williams is an exceptional pass blocker, which matters protecting Matthew Stafford, who's dealing with his own injuries, and also he's a great pass catcher. He had 42 and 35 receptions in college, top 5 amongst the college football running backs the last 2 years. So you get that pass catching upside from a guy who's probably not owned in a lot of leagues. People are forgetting about him that he's on the bye week, and similar can be said for this next guy. And it's another rookie who has elite pass catching skills, and that's the Tampa Bay Bucs back Rachaad White. And the rookie Rachaad White just ended up playing a season high 43% of the snaps and saw great passing game usage, nearly 50-50, 21 routes run compared to Leonard Fournette's 25 routes run. This is encouraging. And you want to pay close attention to this next piece of information. Keep it in mind. And that would be that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a week 11 bye. And this matters because rookies often see their role increase after their bye week, which means Rachaad White is likely to see more work heading into week 12 after the bye week, which is perfect time for the fantasy playoffs. So grab Rachaad White and the veteran wide receiver from the Colts, Paris Campbell. Campbell is coming off of a great game. He's finally staying healthy. He saw 12 targets, over 20 points in this one, and he now has 23 targets over the last 2 weeks alone. And last week might have seemed like a fluke, but the Colts changed their offense. It wasn't a fluke. And the same thing happened this week. Here's what I mean. The Colts are playing much faster the last 2 weeks. Running 64 plays this past week is above the league average, and that's leading to more checkdowns to the running backs. They're throwing quicker passes and the slot receiver in Campbell. And Campbell never leaves the field. He ranks 8th amongst all receivers in the NFL, running 38 routes per game, and he's 2nd in overall slot snaps. This is very helpful because it's going to lead to consistent production. So pick up Campbell and then this next slot wide receiver. And that's the Jets veteran who they re-signed this offseason. They like this guy in Braxton Berrios. Now maybe he's a deeper league ad, but I think he's valuable in most leagues. Corey Davis was injured this past week. It's not thought to be serious, but we'll see if he ends up missing a week or so. And also Elijah Moore wants to be traded away, meaning that Braxton Berrios was able to start this past week. And taking the Elijah Moore role, Berrios played 56% of the snaps. That's 33 total snaps. It led to a couple of targets, but this is the more important news. Zach Wilson just likes targeting Berrios. Since the beginning of 2021, when Berrios is a starter with Wilson, he averages 7.5 targets per game. And that's enough upside, especially in 12-man leagues or deeper, to at least stash him. And then this next rookie. And now this guy is a must-add. It's going to be Wan'Dale Robinson, the Giants wide receiver, who this past week saw a new season high. And that season high was him playing 53 total snaps, which equals 70% of the offensive snaps. He was basically out there for every route run. And he led the Giants with 8 targets. Now here's what you need to know. Wan'Dale Robinson is likely to be this team's wide receiver 1 moving forward. You see, Kenny Golladay on the season has been battling injuries, of course, but he only has 2 total receptions. And Kadarius Toney hasn't played since week 2, just 3 total targets. So add the second-round upside rookie in Wan'Dale, but then avoid this next RB. And that's the Falcons running back, the rookie Tyler Algier out of BYU. You don't want to add him. Now, he had a nice week. He found the end zone. He ran 16 times in a game that they were trailing, so that's somewhat encouraging, but here's the main issue. This Falcons offense ran a league-low 47 plays. You want to see this number in the 60s, mid-60s, 70s. Below 50 is disappointing and concerning. And not only that, but 3 other running backs were involved. involved yet again in this offense, and Caleb Huntley was the main pass catching back. No targets at all for Algier in this game, and not to mention Cordero Patterson and Damian Williams, the veteran running backs who are the number 1 and 2 on this depth chart. Yeah, they're due back any week now. So just avoid this messy backfield, but add this running back. And that's the Jets running back Ty Johnson, because Breece Hall is likely to miss the rest of the season, making Ty Johnson the clear RB2 in New York. So here's what you need to know about the 4-year RB Ty Johnson. Throughout his career in the NFL, he's played in 50+ games, but he's only seen 50% of the snaps or more in 9 of those games. In these games, he averages over 11 fantasy points per game, which is right around top 24 usage, meaning you should add him. He's worth stashing in case something happens to Michael Carter or he sees a bigger role, so stash him and this next wide receiver. And that's the Packers veteran wide receiver Sammy Watkins. Watkins returned from injury this past week. He only played 28 total snaps. The plan was for him to be a little bit limited, but due to some injuries, he had to play more. He played 52% of the snaps. Now, normally I wouldn't be too excited to roster Sammy Watkins, but the Packers need a wide receiver. See for yourself. This Packers depth chart is banged up. Allen Lazard left this game early and he's dealing with a shoulder injury, potentially going to be hitting the IR. Christian Watson, the rookie, is a raw prospect and he's already dealing with a hamstring injury, missing multiple games, and Randall Cobb is on IR. So at this point, it's like Romeo Doubs and then Sammy Watkins, assuming the Packers don't make a trade here. Watkins will be a top 2 receiver for Rodgers. And Rodgers trusted Watkins late in crunch time, targeting multiple times during their comeback attempt, so that's at least encouraging to see. And hey, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe for more. So add the veteran in Sammy Watkins, but avoid this wide receiver. And it's another veteran, the soon-to-be 32-year-old in less than a month, and that's Marquise Goodwin from the Seattle Seahawks. You see, if you're just looking at the box score, he goes for over 22 fantasy points, scores 2 touchdowns, but he only has 5 targets in this game. He saw more usage because DK Metcalf got injured. We have to see what happens there, how long Metcalf will miss, if time at all. But either way, I don't want to add Goodwin. He's a speedster who struggles to get separation. He's only scored 10+ fantasy points 3 times since 2018. This was an outlier performance, of course. Most weeks he'll have a couple of catches for 30 or 40 yards. Now, another guy you don't want to spend a priority waiver on is Deontay Foreman, the Carolina Panthers running backs. In past weeks, I thought he was a good ad, but we now have new information. He only played 38% of the snaps last week when Chuba Hubbard was healthy. Now, just like Marquise Goodwin, the game log and the fantasy points will look good here, so it'll fool your league mates, but not you. He had half of these rushing yards on just 1 run, and he wasn't used all that often until Hubbard got hurt in the 4th quarter. And as I mentioned earlier, this team is going to be trailing a lot, which means Foreman's going to come off the field because he's not the passing down back. And instead, Chuba Hubbard, if he's healthy, will come on the field, or if Chuba Hubbard was forced to miss time with this ankle injury, it'll be Raheem Blackshear coming on the field instead in those second halves, and they're trailing, less snaps and usage for Deontay Foreman. So if you happen to own Deontay Foreman, try and sell high on him and then add this running back. And that would be DJ Dallas, who is definitely a handcuff you want to be owning. Now, this past week, he ended up playing 30% of the snaps. It led to 8 touches, which is solid usage just in general as being an RB2 on a team, but here's the main reason why you want him. Kenneth Walker is the clear running back 1 in Seattle, one of the best running backs in the league, honestly, right now already, just based on pure skill. But as you can see here, according to PFF, DJ Dallas was the only other running back in this backfield to see another touch, and that means something. If something happens to Kenneth Walker, who is going to see high volume moving forward, well, it means Dallas is going to step into a decent role. So stash DJ Dallas, especially in deeper leagues, and then this next tight end. You see, Darren Waller missed practice all of last week, didn't practice a single day, and then he missed the game, so he's probably going to be missing some more time, which opens up increased usage for the Raiders tight end Foster Moreau. And this past week, he had an elite role. He played every single snap except for 1. 54 of 55 snaps, 96% of the total snaps played by Moreau led to 3 catches on 4 targets. And Moreau averages over 10 fantasy points per game when there's no Waller. He has red zone upside as well, so he's worth a stash if you need a tight end, especially with bye weeks these next few weeks. So get him and this next wide receiver. That would be Josh Palmer, who missed this past game with a concussion, but assuming he returns in week 8, he is worth adding. Because this Chargers team is banged up. Mike Williams had to be helped to the locker room, was injured in the game late yesterday. He might be missing some time or a serious amount of time, and Keenan Allen even left the game early, dealing with a hamstring injury at halftime, did not come back into the game. So if either veteran is forced to miss time or be limited moving forward, Palmer is going to regain a starting spot, probably in 2 wide receiver sets. And that's important because he's already earned nearly 7 targets per game with just Keenan Allen out. If Mike Williams misses now, maybe some more downfield usage for Palmer, which opens up upside in fantasy. So acquire Palmer and my fantasy cheat sheet, which is a 5-step system to beat your league mates each week and win your fantasy league. It has everything you need to be prepared every single week to dominate your league mates, from waiver wires to rankings, projections, player notes, all that you need. And listen up, because this is important. If you do not win your fantasy league, the one-time payment of $10, which is less than $1 per week to have access to this, will be refunded. So if you don't win your league, I'll refund the one-time payment of $10. This is completely risk-free. You could use all these tools, beat your league mates, and if you don't, you get your money back. If you're interested in joining the thousands of people currently using the cheat sheet right now to beat their league mates, well, click the link in the description to learn more. And then you want to stash the Browns receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones, who quietly, very quietly so far this season, has 7 or more targets in 67% of his games and 5 or more targets in every single game but 1. That's good usage. But here's the reason you really want him. He has elite speed and burst, and that is very beneficial downfield, especially when you consider Deshaun Watson is back soon, and Watson in his career ranks top 5 in deep ball accuracy. This is a match made in heaven for upside in fantasy. So you want to get Peoples-Jones, who might actually be a fantasy championship winner for you in the playoffs when Deshaun is back, and then add this handcuff RB. And that would be Samaje Perine, who's available in 97% of leagues, and he's the clear-cut handcuff to Joe Mixon. And you can see for yourself here, Samaje Perine was the only running back to see a snap behind Mixon, played 30% of the snaps, and now on the season has played 94% of the backup RB snaps. And very quietly, he's averaging 2 receptions per game this year, so maybe something for player props moving forward. Over 1 or over 1.5 receptions is something to look at. Now, here's the thing. Joe Mixon is the obvious and clear running back 1 right now in Cincinnati. But Mixon is seeing a lot of usage per game, and he's missed games in back-to-back years, which means that there's a chance you see 1 or 2 Samaje starts moving forward. So grab Perine and this rookie tight end. And that would be Greg Dulcich, who played 60% of the snaps as the starting tight end for the Broncos this past week, and it translated to 11 fantasy points, now starting his career with back-to-back top 10 tight end performances, and more importantly, 9 targets is very encouraging. And what I mean by being the clear tight end 1 in Denver is he ran by far the most routes. See for yourself. And as you can see here, Dulcich ran 34 routes on Sunday, 26 more than any other Broncos tight end. And Albert O was now inactive for the 2nd straight game. This is the clear-cut tight end 1 on the Denver Broncos. He has top 10 upside every single week in Greg Dulcich. Now, these are the players you want to be adding immediately. And you also want to be trading for players, especially as the week goes on and we get more information. And when that video releases on Wednesday, it will be right here for you beautiful people to check out. If you're not already, hit that subscribe button.